we do have a quorum. And Kelly, is there anything that we need or you need to say about the fact that this is being recorded?
Sorry about that. I'm doing it from home today, solo.
Okay.
So I'm working, the toddler. But yes, I do just need to read the disclosure very quickly. So I will do that right now, and then we can jump right in. So this meeting of the Barnstable Infrastructure and Energy Committee is being recorded and will be posted for future viewing on the Town of Barnstable website. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such a recording or transmission must notify the chair. So with that, we can get started, and I'll turn it back over to you, Barry.
Okay, well, thank you for doing that. So the first order of business, just going over the meeting minutes that Kelly distributed. I have no comment on them. They seem to be in order. Does anyone have any comment or suggestion, edits? Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just looking. I know that the 28th of October is kind of questionable for myself, and I think
okay, that's not a minute question. We're gonna get to that and a little bit later in the meeting, Rob. So we will get to
that. Sounds good.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Yeah, they look good. I move we approve them.
Okay, second.
Second.
Ron, okay, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. And we're very grateful that Allison Alessi is joining us today. And I think Jane invited her. And Jane, maybe if you could do a quick introduction for Allison.
Sure. Allison actually invited me to come to this committee about 4 or 5 years ago when she was on the committee. And I think, Gordon, you were on the committee then too. And I think you were talking about the stretch code back then, if I recall. And we particularly wanted your insight, Allison, because that's trying to get us to join the rest of the Cape and become a green community is probably our #1 priority of this committee for this round of business. And so we wanted your insight, the green community, but specifically some of the comments you've made about how awkward it is for Barnstable to not be in the green community relative to the building sector, and what your suggestions would be for addressing the issue going forward, particularly with the stretch code. And by the way, Allison is a very accomplished green architect. I think, are most of your designs now even passive design?
Approaching that. We have a really practical approach, so we're not always doing all of the detailing required for passive house because it's very expensive, but we try to be near net zero, we say.
But you're probably beyond adopting the stretch code with most of your designs. And I think that the fact that that's the goal of you and your clients, and what it does for the building owners going forward, and maybe what it does for you and the builder in the design build process would be interesting for us to understand, because our pushback about 18 months ago when this was brought to a vote, the vote was actually, should the town consider a green community, and the vote was a draw on the town council with 1 abstention. But it was my sense was that most of the pushback was from the building community. Gordon, can you clarify that, or do you agree with that? Or
yeah, Gordon, you're on mute.
Sorry, I would agree. It was interesting. But I think that's evolved since.
Right.
Yeah. So just and let me just add, Allison, give you a little context where we're at as a committee. So we've talked to the DOER regional coordinator. We understand there have been some changes to the stretch code since it was last considered, which I think is almost 3 years ago now. And we've asked Brian Florence, who's the head of inspectional services, for a meeting to talk about this. I think the other thing we got from DOER today that they would consider an application by the end of this year. And we're looking for, if it gets that far, to take it back to the town council probably early in the fall. So the aim would be to get an application together by the end of the year. So
I just want to clarify that the Green Communities designation has 5 components, and
sure.
one of them is the stretch code. And instead of spending time on the other 4, we can do, but the stretch code is the one where we ran into the most opposition.
Right.
So we're going to start with that, and then we can finish the rest of the,
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. And yes, 3 of the other criteria have been met already. We've been told we're going to get verification of it, and the David Anthony, who's the head of asset management, is working on an energy plan. So Gordon's right. Probably the stretch code is the big issue.
Yeah, the stretch code is hard. I always say that it was really hard to talk about insulation details at a public hearing, right? It's boring. But I think your timing is good because the builders are really dialed into this right now. So for the 14 other towns on the Cape that are green communities, their big change is coming for them in 3 weeks. So on June 30th, the stretch code changes. Here, I'm going to share. Oh, I can't do share screen. But the HERS numbers are changing for what's required. And you can see that the state is really incentivizing electrification. So there are penalties if you have gas in the building. But for example, I can read one. So right now, like the HERS rating that's required for a mixed fuel building, so one that has gas and electricity, it's 52 and it's going to 42. So that's a significant change. So you're going to see the builders are all nervous about this. To Gordon's point, 18 months ago may have been a different climate. I'm not a member of Home Builders, but I understand that they've done training with HERS raters and are kind of coming up to speed with this. But when we first applied for green communities, we definitely had, and probably this was like in 2010, yep. We definitely had builders speaking against it. And what I find really striking is that one of the initial complaints that I remember was, we don't want a different building code in every town. And now that's what they're heading for, right? So the code is different in every town except for Barnstable, right? Barnstable is staying at the same code. The HERS rating isn't required in Barnstable. It's required on all the other towns on the Cape. I would recommend, if you go and do something with town council or Brian Florence, that you have a HERS rater with you, someone who knows the ins and outs in this, because it's gotten confusing for me now, because there's also 2 towns on the Cape that are opt-in towns. So their green communities decided to like double down on being the new stretch code, and they have even more stringent requirements, and that's Truro and Wellfleet. So it is kind of a complicated subject to kind of just debate at a public hearing. And it's insulation details. It's kind of boring. Do you all know what a HERS rating is, what that means?
Just that it's an energy efficiency rating.
Yes.
Yeah, so when I first started doing HERS ratings, 100 was a code-built house, and an Energy Star house was 85. So you had to be 15% better than code. And the numbers I just read are 42, 52. Those are much more stringent, right? Our code is much trickier now. But I'm also finding I'll meet with our HERS rater, like when we're doing a typical house that's maybe not new construction, because with new construction, it's a little bit easier to attack these energy goals, right? When you're doing a renovation on a historic house, it's a little bit harder. So one thing that's important to note is that this code isn't triggered unless it's 1,000 square feet or more. So that's a pretty big addition or renovation. So that's not every project. I think there's a lot of fear and scaremongering out there now, but for renovations, it's not triggered till I think it's 1,000 square feet. But anyway, we found there's practical ways to approach it. If you pay attention to the mechanicals being mini splits with very efficient ratings, if you pay attention to what the windows are, you can still use Anderson double glazed windows. You might have to pay attention a little bit to like some of the films they use on the windows. So some of the little detailing around the window U value. And if you do these couple of things, you can meet the code. So it's not that the code is prescriptively telling you you have to do 4 inches of insulation on the outside, which is another point I like to make. So what I like about HERS modeling is it is a performance code, right? So what they do when we start the design process is data entry, all of the R values, the insulation values, the windows, the mechanicals, as I was mentioning, and create a model, and then it spits out this number. But it also spits out performance data, like this is how much it's going to cost to heat this house. This is how much how many kilowatt hours it's going to use to heat this house. And we use that information to size solar systems. So it's really helpful. That's one part of HERS rating. The other piece of HERS rating happens during construction, where they come and do a blower door test. So they do a test of the building in the field. And I think these are such valuable tools. I don't think it's a burden or a punishment. HERS rating isn't free. I think I pay around $1,500 to $2,000 for a project to get rated and tested. But I love the testing because it's third-party independent testing, right? It's not me, it's not the builder, it's not the homeowner, it's this other person saying, this is how your building leaks. So this is where we found a crack in the insulation. And we almost always find things. So I find it very valuable. And then on the modeling side of HERS rating, I really like it because you can try a couple of different things. Because it's a performance model and not prescriptive, you don't have to use the old values that builders are used to with R20 walls, R38 roof. You can try a bunch of different things. And I think that's been a valuable tool for us, where we can find out, oh, if you actually do this much more insulation, it's going to perform like this. And I think that's very helpful.
Yeah. Allison, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So we're planning to sit down with Brian Florence, and would he have had any direct experience, the inspectors that work for any direct experience with HERS raters? The one thing, just from my own experience, is the Mass Save renovations program. As I understand it, requires a HERS rater, because I actually got involved in that personally. And so is that something that the town would have gotten involved in, the town inspectors, or not? So I just want to see.
I would hope so, but I don't know, because it's not required in Barnstable. It's not, because they're not a green community. It's not been required.
No, this is a different program where it is optional.
It's the same program. It's the same program.
Yeah.
Because what happens, they make this model and that tells you how much your rebate is. I mean, there's some variations on that. If you're just doing a renovation and you put in mini splits, you get a different rebate system. But if you're doing new construction or a gut renovation, it's all the same program. So the HERS raters that I work with are based in Sagamore Beach, but they put all their data into Mass Save, and that's where the rebate comes from.
Right. So I was wondering, just to ask Brian Florence, is whether he's had any experience with HERS raters through the Mass Save program. I guess we can.
I would hope he has, but I don't know, because Barnstable has not been requiring it. In fairness, I would say, because we work in most towns on the Cape, not every town is great. Like when we're applying for a building permit, we're supposed to submit a HERS rating, but it's not always asked for. So I think there is a little gap in the training of all the building officials. I'm not sure what he knows.
Okay, all right.
But to follow through, I said I pay about $1,500 or $2,000 to do a HERS rating. It's typically paid for with the rebate and then some. So I don't want to bog you down with numbers, but if we get to these certain thresholds, we get $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000 back, and we've been able to do that for some houses. The $20,000 rebate's pretty tricky. But I don't think it's too bad to do the 10 or the 15 if you're
So
kind of
they,
paying
yeah,
attention.
yeah. So you're saying is you can get the rebates through the Mass Save program, whether it's a renovation or new construction,
Yes.
even though it's essentially required anyway. Is that?
Sorry, the programs have changed a bit over the years.
Yeah.
I do believe you get the incentive. Sorry, ask that again. Say it one more time.
Yeah. So I know that the Mass Save has programs which are incentive based, and I went through this myself. So yeah. So the fact that under the stretch code, you're required to get HERS ratings of a certain level, can you also get the Mass Save
Yes.
benefits? So that'll offset the cost, or at least some of the cost.
I guess that's the big picture point, that this HERS rating that's required, A, is usually paid for by the rebate incentives. But B, you have to look at it a little more holistically than that.
Sure.
Not only is it that, but every year for heating bills, it's saving clients money, right?
Right.
And so I like that HERS model spits out money and it spits out kilowatt hours. So we can say this is what it's going to cost to heat your house if you do this. But
Well,
it's not a perfect model, but I do find it like a good placeholder for kind of like what else are we going to use? Like, I don't think it's very good at modeling lights and televisions and plug loads. It has a good number for that. So it's not perfect, but I think it's a good placeholder for sure.
But you said it helps you size your solar PV system, which is.
I love that, right? I
That's
love that piece, but although I think you have to pay attention to like car charging now and what are these other like loads coming in the future. But yeah, I do love that piece of it. What else? I guess one approach that I mentioned this to Gordon when I saw him the other day, one approach I tried to take with Brian and the building department was like, hey, how many projects is this really affecting? How many new construction building permits are pulled in the town of Barnstable? I can't remember the numbers, and maybe it's changed since COVID, but I don't think it affects that many people. I think they make this idea that like, oh my God, this is going to cost so much for everybody. But I don't necessarily think that's true.
like 10 or 15 a year, isn't it? Something like that.
I'm not sure. I don't have the latest data.
Yeah, I thought.
And I guess I would also argue if somebody can afford to build now on the Cape, I mean, construction costs that we're seeing are $400 a square foot and up. If you have to pay an extra, I don't know, 2 to 4% for some of these upgrades, I think you can afford it.
Especially when it's going to save you money on operating costs.
I think so.
And we are in a climate emergency, we keep forgetting that, but that's, people may not forget it after this hurricane season, but we are living in a climate emergency, so.
No, that's true. I definitely think now is a good time though. The builders are all hyper aware of it. They're realizing they need to pay attention to insulation and I don't know. I think it would be powerful if you could have a builder, on your committee or at this forum or whatever your plan is. I think it would be helpful to have somebody. I don't know. That's kind of hard to find.
Gordon, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I forget what I was going to say. We ran into the biggest opposition we had last time was Brian Florence wanting to write his way of sort of deferring the whole process was to say I'm gonna go to the state and we're gonna write our own code for the town.
Ridiculous. And by the way, this code, why it's a little bit weird and stringent, wasn't written by the BBRS, the normal board who writes the codes. It was written by the energy department. So I think it is a little weird.
Yeah, that was a result of some legislation that was passed a few years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what I was going to say is I think Hanover 1 that's behind BJ's with the 272 apartments. I think that was built to the recent HERS rating.
That's awesome.
There's the only gas in the building is for the outside grills.
Wow, so that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're doing it anyway, and if you're building in another town, it's you get used to what you have to do.
Right.
Yeah, now I know Habitat for Humanity really builds to kind of a high level in terms of energy efficiency, and I have a friend who volunteers there, and I'm trying to get connected with the guy who's responsible for the design and energy efficiency. But yeah, maybe they would be.
They'd be a great partner. If they can do it, anyone can do it. I know they
Yeah.
do get volunteer labor,
Right,
but
right.
they're building very tight, very energy efficient houses. Yes.
Right.
So,
Barry,
one question- Go ahead, Rob.
yeah, I was just wondering, do you just design to FERS ratings anyway, even if it's in Barnstable, or
Yes.
so it doesn't matter to you?
No, that's why the code change hasn't been that painful. I sort of said, well, okay, not all our projects are net zero by any means, right? Sometimes we're doing additions on old sea captains' houses on 6A. But when I talk to my HERS raters, I don't think it's too bad for folks that aren't that interested in it. There's definitely penalties for gas, but I do find that the technology with induction is getting better and better, and people are more open to it. The other piece of no gas, though, is no gas fireplaces. I've had clients that's been really hard and they won't do it. They like the push on button with the gas. So it's no gas in the house, no generator, no gas on site.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to, we talked about this, Gordon. One of the things we ran into last time too is people talking about, oh, the stove that they wanted wasn't available. And I think that was maybe to do with COVID, was it not? That there was some pushback at a meeting we were at, that a builder told one of the town councilors that they had to wait a year to get the stove that was Energy Star, right?
That was at the hearing. That was at the hearing where the vote was held, and it sounded ridiculous to me. I mean,
there was a moment where that was happening, not just with Energy Star stuff, with everything, but I don't hear about that anymore. So I'd be really surprised if that were a factor in most people's occupancy.
Supply chain.
Yeah.
And also, I think a stove, isn't that the critical piece you need to move in? You know, you don't need a refrigerator. You need a stove, I think.
Oops, I think Allison, you're on freeze frame.
Oh, am I?
No, you're all set.
Okay.
What about air exchange? That might come up.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this old-fashioned idea that we're saying seal up the house and don't let it breathe. Everybody, you're going to get sick. Houses need to breathe. And I think that's true, but we don't want them breathing through leaky windows and old walls. So we're doing dedicated ventilation.
Energy recovery ventilation, right?
Yeah, and there's lots of, those are getting better and better. It used to be that like maybe 5 years ago, a dedicated energy recovery ventilator was maybe $5,000, but like Brown, who does bathroom fans, they make one now. Panasonic, the Whitesbury, you know, there are more and more things on the market. So yes, you have to pay attention to ventilation. You'll be sick if you're in your tight house with no air exchange.
Well, you'll be sick anyway if you don't pay attention to indoor air quality.
Of course, of course. But so I don't think that is cost prohibitive. I mean, I think the mini splits that people are using for heating and cooling now are much less expensive. If you do the ductless ones, they're much less expensive than installing ductwork and a full-blown gas system with forced hot air.
They can also have air quality components that are partnered with them.
Right.
Purify
I do think the mechanicals can be much less. They're not always. Mini splits aren't perfect. There's some problems with those. And I do sometimes hear they're very expensive. Like we have a very high electricity rate on the Cape. So people that use mini splits, you'll notice it in January and February, even if your house is pretty tight.
But I think the mini splits are much better now than they were 4 or 5 years ago in terms of being able to heat at a colder outdoor temperature. And it's great for the few hot days that we do have. You know, people used to worry about AC on the Cape, and now there's, you know, maybe a couple weeks even that are pretty. Well, if you don't have the dehumidification that you get with the AC component too, is nice.
It is very nice. We do a lot of heat pump hot water heaters too, and those are getting better and better too. So again, those are all electric, but it's not the same as doing like electric hot water heaters. Those are very inefficient. These typically, I think we see in our models that the domestic hot water heating load for the year is like 750 kilowatt hours. That's pretty low. But I do think you have to pay attention. We do have a very high electricity rate, and I don't know, a lot of change is happening on the Cape with electricity with the wind farm and things like that. So we definitely need to pay attention to that. What else about stretch? Sorry.
I think you've given us a lot of good ideas. I feel like you really helped us come up to speed on where we are, and from a practical perspective, you know, from working in the field, you're giving us good context, Allison.
Yeah, I think one thing I always like if you ever get to a meeting with Brian or whatever is maybe a couple of case studies too, and let me know if I can help with that. Like we could put together a project and model it a couple of different ways. I just had the HERS rater show me like 3 ways to get to that $15,000 rebate, so I can share those with you. But none of them, well, one option is outside rigid insulation, but all the other 2 are just between the bays. This is new construction in Dennis. I don't know. I think there's ways to do that. And this $15,000 rebate is pretty nice.
I
So
think case
for,
study sounds
for
good.
new construction. That's for new construction.
That's for new construction.
So the
rebates are a little different when you just go for mini splits, or if you're doing like the program changes a lot, to be honest. So I don't know. There was one program for renovation that we did a couple years ago where you did a before and after blower door, and your money was based on that. It's also a little different for commercial versus residential. So what I'm talking about is mostly residential.
So
I have to look up what the triggers are for commercial, and that's probably something that's worth knowing a little more about, since Barnstable does have a healthy commercial sector.
So this applies to our new houses, new commercial buildings, renovated houses of more than 1,000 square feet, something like that.
Yes.
And does it also apply to renovated commercial for some?
Sorry, I don't know the answer to that. I can find out.
So you know, one of the things I guess to talk about what's different from last time. You know, my own experience, and without getting into my situation, but the builder was not troubled by having HERS rater involved.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's evolved. I think 5 or 10 years ago that it was harder. The home builders wrote a letter like opposing stretch code when it first, you know, when Green Communities was first adopted, I think in 2009, 2010. So they were vehemently opposed, and they came to all the meetings. But I think it's changed. Yeah.
So I have a question. I guess I'll address this to Gordon and Allison. So we could, you know, just I guess ask that the town council take it up, or we could ask that there be a workshop first before the town council takes it up. Gordon, what do you think would be better?
I think a workshop, and then give people time to work, you know, to think about it. You could just say, here's the policy, you know, and the rationale. We could debate it and then just vote on it. But I think it's, you know, like Allison says, it's complicated, and people just have to understand that it's complicated, but we have to sort of step back and keep looking at the big picture. How many people does it affect? Think about our housing stock into the future, how much energy we're going to save in the long run. I mean, you build something now, it's going to be around in 75 years. So you want to build it well now. I think it's a lot to absorb.
Yeah, and you know, frankly, I think the town has done a good job with the workshops on various topics. I think, to me, they've been very helpful. I think this would follow that. That probably would. I would think that town council would be receptive to it.
I think so. If we took during a regular, we don't have to have a special meeting even. We could just do
Right.
a regular meeting. Have a HERS rater come and a local builder. And maybe take some of the slides from the Green Communities program and look at them. They have some, they have some scenarios that they've put out.
Okay.
I don't know how up to date. I don't know how up to date they are is the problem, but maybe Allison could sit down and with somebody and look at them.
Yeah. I think it would be great to have a HERS rater at this workshop. I think the danger at hearings is having somebody who doesn't know. The code is complicated.
Right.
I'm telling you, I find it confusing, and I'm working in this. I have to use my HERS raters more than ever. So it would be good. Maybe somebody from Cape Light Compact too, to your question about commercial, they might be good allies with that.
Well, yeah, so I think right now, so we've asked Brian Florence for a meeting. I haven't heard back. He was on vacation. And I got the request by email to him when he was getting the day he got back. So and I'll follow up. I haven't heard back, so but that's something, and I guess perhaps we're having a workshop. Whether you invite him to attend or invite him to present.
Sure.
Yeah, I think, yeah. So that's something we need to consider, but so that we need to develop a plan for this that probably includes setting up a workshop and having an application developed, and you, I think, wanted to get it in by the end of the year, so that would, have workshop, town council meeting, application somewhere in that process.
Well, and we need to coordinate with David Anthony because he was going to handle everything else except the stretch code, I think.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. So anyways, there's a lot of work involved.
I think Kristen thought it would be a good idea to have a workshop or some
Right.
sort of educational piece first,
Yeah.
and sort of as you suggested, Gordon, and then let people think about it. But it's, for all the people who are new on the council, particularly if they haven't gotten into the weeds on this.
I think Rob Brennan, who is local builder in Hyannis, had he's on the climate the Cape Cod Climate Collaborative, but he's also head of the Home Builders and Remodelers Association, and he's done a 180 over the years. He's still worried about that gap, that the $1,500, $2,000 gap for hiring the HERS rater, and who pays for that, and can that be subsidized or something? But if it sounds like there are incentives and from Cape Light Compact that completely cover that. So he would be somebody. I'll talk to him and see if he could come.
Yeah.
The other question would be for Allison is, do you have a HERS rater who maybe lives in Barnstable? I guess they don't have to live in Barnstable, but
Yep, I have one in Barnstable. And one who's done a lot of the educational trainings in Yarmouthport, so I can ask if they can come.
Yeah. So who does he train?
Well, lately they've been training builders, right? Today I just emailed them, like, a realtor called me today and she said a builder came into their office and did a presentation for all these realtors and scared them about this energy code. And I was like, who was it? She wouldn't tell me. And I was like, you need to talk to the HERS raters too.
Yep.
I think it's very irresponsible to be like doom and gloom. And also I think it's very short-sighted on the builders. Like, why wouldn't you want to say, hey, we can be part of this solution? I just think it's a strange response to be fear-mongering right now. So I just asked them to go talk to realtors. So they've been doing a lot of trainings around this change for the last 6 months or so. It's been training.
Allison, I've just set up a call tomorrow for the guy I know who's on the equivalent committee for the town of Falmouth. Yeah, so is there anything particular of interest there that I should ask him, or?
Well, what's sort of interesting about how this got approved in all the other towns was that at town meeting, and we don't really have that. So in theory, it should be easier in Barnstable, but that hasn't been the case.
Okay.
I mean, of course you should ask them. I think your strategy of getting the building inspector on board is a good one.
Yeah, and also we're probably getting the DOER regional coordinator to show up at this workshop would be a good idea, I think.
One last thing on that. One thing I think about for building inspectors with HERS rating is it sort of takes the responsibility off of them. There used to be an insulation inspection, and they can still do that. They don't have to, but there's also this piece of paper that says this is what the building is doing, and this is it's, you know, the HERS raters come out 2 or 3 times during construction, and they get a final documentation at the end. So in my mind, that is so reassuring if you're a building inspector, so that you have this. You don't have to be the one doing these visual inspections or, you know, going out to all the jobs. So in my mind, that's an argument that's good for building inspectors.
Yeah, I would think so. Okay. Anything else, Allison? As we move further along, we may be contacting you.
Of course.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I did this for too long and I kind of ran out of steam with it. It's a long time to have been told no to green communities.
Well, you did a good job. It's just that we didn't have the right environment, receptive audience.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, we have Gordon on the town council now, right? He was just on the energy committee.
That's why I'm on the town council.
That's right.
So
No, I do think it's really changed, and it's more in the, like I said, the consciousness of the builders now. I also think that map that shows who's a green community and who's not is pretty powerful. I forget the breakdown, the number of towns. There's very few who aren't. It's
Right.
pretty powerful.
85%, 85 or 90% are green communities, and it's 170,000 a year matching funds for energy efficiency. So we've been leaving a lot of money on the table, which is not.
It's not great. And Mashpee, I think, was the earliest adopter on the Cape, and you can look at how much they've earned from it. So
Right, over $1 million.
Yeah.
Over $1 million. Yeah.
So
then Allison, I take it you're a resident of the town of Barnstable.
I am.
Good. Because that when we get people up at meetings, that seems to make a difference. So,
Yeah.
yeah, good.
So Chris, do you have any questions? Or no? Okay, just soaking it in. It is complicated.
It is.
That was part of the frustrating.
I agree.
Part of it all, you know, was that it was easy to spin a story and say something could go wrong. That's
right.
Things happen, you know, but like Allison says, you know, we need to be part of the solution, and
yeah,
that's it.
Well, okay. It's happening. It's the code in 14 and 15 towns in the Cape now.
Right.
So I maybe it would be interesting to watch what happens over July, like the first 30 days. I'm curious if we'll be hearing it. I don't know if I've really seen it in the newspaper or media, but I'm curious. There's been a flurry of activity with builders permitting in June, right, to get grandfathered under the old code. So again, I think your timing is really interesting. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think that was one of the problems we ran into also, was that, you know, the code is changing, you know, and pretty soon it's going to be the same as the base code, and the base code is this, you know, is going to move up, and there were different times of year that things were changing, and
it is hard.
So, you know, I had heard that as well, and so I understand it, and I think I asked DOR this question because if it turns out sometime in the future people are really dissatisfied with it, that the town can opt out. So it's not so it's not this
that's fair
irretrievable decision. And I from just listening to the last vote, the tape of it, I got the impression that the people who did not like the fact that it could change, people thought that they had no say going forward once and that's not true. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
I don't know, and they don't typically. I think the typical rule is about 3 years. So, you know, there shouldn't be another new code for 3 more years.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, Allison, thank you so much.
Sure.
You're invited to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you certainly don't have to.
I got to make my kids dinner, but
okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Allison. Thank you. Keep me posted.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Barry, I actually have to get off early. Steve is giving a book talk at Tales of Cape Cod, and we're gonna head out to do that. So I'm sorry, but
Okay.
I'm leaving early tonight.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Are you leaving now or just?
Yeah, I need to
Okay.
go.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for.
Okay. Yeah, I
chatting
think
with
that
us.
was very useful. She's been in the midst of it and been fighting for it and works in it. And so that was a really good perspective.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
See you next meeting.
All right.
See you.
Bye.
All right. Well, given that, the rest of the members need to stay on the call so we can have a board.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah. So other updates on green communities. I think I already mentioned them. One is, and I think everybody's seen a copy of the email asking Brian Florence for a meeting, that the primary purpose is green communities, but also for food waste. And I'm going to follow up, try to talk to him. One thing that occurred to me, we're trying to do this in a way to be most efficient, but it also makes the meeting probably more difficult to organize because it probably needs to have more people. So if that is a problem, I think what I'd like to do is just have the meeting on green communities, not delay it, because it has more time urgency. But if anyone has a different thought on that, speak.
I think that's fine to do it that way, Barry. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what what the potential change was. You wanted to add more people to it?
No, I mean, I basically said we want to talk to you about green communities or in the stretch code primarily, but also your role with respect to food waste, your department. So I'm saying if there's a problem getting someone, if he wants to have someone, an inspector at the meeting, but he also wants to have someone in the role with respect to food waste, and that becomes an impediment to getting this meeting.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
We'll go forward with green communities because it's more time critical.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, that's our primary purpose, and we wouldn't want to slow that down. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay. Let's see. Having a call tomorrow with the guys on the Falmouth Energy Committee, see if that produces anything interesting. And I have made a request to Habitat for Humanities to talk to the guy who's responsible for energy design. So so that's what I've done. Any other updates that anyone else has? Okay. Food waste. I don't have any updates other than the request for the meeting with Brian Florence, but if John or Kelly, if you have any updates or anyone else.
Yeah, I did. This morning, Recycling Works had a seminar. It was a hybrid event. They had a bunch of people there live, and you could also watch it online. And I watched it, and it was quite interesting. They are continuing to focus quite a bit on commercial food waste and offer a lot of resources to support that. So I think it is something we should continue to focus on, but I do agree with you that not if that slows down our green communities meeting.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we can do this on a parallel path, and John, if you could, sort of take the lead on following things in that area, that'd be great. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, Kelly, do you have anything else to add there?
I don't really have any major updates. We're just still working through a initial communications plan with the transfer station folks. So hopefully we'll have some movement on that shortly.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and if there's anything I can do to help with that, let me know.
Yeah, thank you, John. I mean, the biggest thing I know we talked about previously, and I think Jane had some ideas, is for the video portion, and that's probably going to be the easiest thing to get scheduled. I had that thought about having a overall video through Barnstable Government Access that educates folks about food composting. So not just what's done through the transfer station, but also what you can do at home. So if you have any recommendations on an expert who can speak to food composting at home, that would be great. I know, like I said, Jane had some suggestions as well.
Yeah, there isn't any one person that comes to mind. I'm sure we could find somebody, and I think, you know, and we can, because I agree that is something that we haven't emphasized enough in the past. So
yeah. And even if it's just, you know, if it's a resident who's been doing it for a really long time, I just know like what we try to do, and something that town council certainly enjoys too, is having other experts. So it's not always just the town, but that we can point to other folks who have great thoughts and ideas. So I'll circle back with Jane, because I think she had some possible suggestions as well. But if we know of anyone, or maybe it's even looking, I mean, I don't know, it could get a little political if we tried to approach a vendor, especially since we don't have a program in place. But I'll do some digging and some research.
Yeah, I wonder whether, you know, Christy Cap at Resilient Roots might be a good person for that.
I'm sorry, Barry. Which was that?
Christy Cap at Resilient Roots in terms of home composting.
Yeah, and what I can also do is I can send an email around to the entire committee so everyone can kind of just jump on the thread and share any suggestions. That might be the easiest way.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
And Kelly, as I think about it, there is somebody who, and I'm going to have to dig to find the name, that I talked to a few years ago. They were more focused on larger, more like commercial type of composting operations, but they were very knowledgeable. So I'll see if I can find that name.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, and you know, we did have that guest speaker. I can't remember. I think his name was Ethan. I have to look back at the notes. From last meeting. You know, maybe it's even someone from the Barnstable School District that's doing this at the school level, or maybe we invite him back. I mean, that might be an avenue to pursue as well.
If he strikes me as someone who would be a great presenter on video, and maybe we could get him interested in it.
Yeah, maybe, John. I think I have a name who's the contact person for the school system, the DOER program on food recycling. Maybe if you could follow up with them.
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. I'll put all of that in an email thread either later today or first thing tomorrow, and we can kind of start fleshing out some ideas.
Okay. Great.
Yep.
All right. So additional updates from the committee chair. So that's me. So just a couple of thoughts. So, and I'm going to give credit to Jane, even though she's not here. But Jane suggested to me that kind of what is behind really all of our efforts or inquiries are really concerned about climate change, and the town has passed a resolution that climate change is of urgent concern, and trying to minimize our greenhouse gas emissions. So, and we have Chris here in our committee, who's really an expert in climate change and really communicating that to people. So, Chris, we're wondering whether we can start this off just with the committee, but if you can give us an update, particularly, you know, things that are kind of newsworthy or important, or, you know, things that you're working on at the Oceanographic Institute. This would be great. So is that something that you would be willing to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and just to clarify, the consulting branch of, so Woods Hole Group, since we spun off the Hui back in the 80s, but yeah, no, I mean, that's something, climate communications is one of my specialties. So I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and this really hit home to me a few days ago, where my wife has a friend who just inherited a house, that's like right on the beach,
Mhm.
protected by sand. The house is already on stilts. And so, uh, she's asked, what should I do? Should I, remodel this house and put money into it? Should I move it? Should I sell so, and is interested in getting information that would help her make that decision.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So maybe we'll put you on the agenda, Chris, for the next time. And we'll see how it goes. But if it may be that this is something that we can have as a communication effort to the public.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that's important.
I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, the other thing that is, I guess, new. I got an email last week from Kristen Turkelson that about what our, as committee members, what our obligations are with respect to conflicts of interest. And so there's a training, and I think Kelly circulated that in an email. And so essentially, as I understand it, we're required to. This is online training. It's about an hour. Gives you a review, and then to acknowledge electronically that you've reviewed this. There's also a summary of the conflict of interest law, and also an electronic acknowledgement that you've reviewed the law, or the summary of the law. And then, as I understand it, to send that by email to Cynthia Lovell, who's the town. Gordon, what's her town clerk? Is that what she is?
She's the administrative assistant to the town council.
Okay, all
If
right.
you look up town council, Cynthia Lovell's name, her name would show up.
Yeah, so it's Cynthia.Lovell at
Yeah,
town.barnstable.ma.us. You can look it up online. So anyway, so I'm just informing people that your obligations are to review the training, review the summary of the law, sign the acknowledgements for both electronically, and then forward that to Cynthia Lovell.
And where do we find the training, Barry?
Yeah, so in the email, there's a link.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, and I went through both today, so it's about an hour and 10 minutes. So that's what they said it would be, and that was pretty accurate. And it even
Which
has
email was that?
what? Yeah, so Kelly emailed that earlier today. Yeah, so I would ask that you do that, and maybe if you could send an email back to me or Kelly, or maybe both of us, that you've done that. So then I can fulfill my responsibility that we've all done that.
Just scanning it. I don't see it, Barry.
Yeah,
There's a
thing too. I sent a couple emails that same day, so let me see if I can resend it, because I'm not seeing it in my
Thanks, Kelly.
I'm not seeing
Yeah,
it in my sent folder, but I don't know what's going on with the email, but
okay.
I'll just resend it to everyone just in case.
Okay,
Awesome.
yeah, there's a link that you click on. That's all right. So Kelly, thank you for doing that. And then the last thing that we had from the last meeting was reviewing the proposed meeting schedule. And I know that different people already have raised some questions, including Jane. So why don't we just go through month by month? And if people have an issue with one of those dates, we will change it. That's something we can all agree on. So let's start with July 15th. I think we agreed last time to have one meeting both for July and August. Okay, July 15th is okay. August 12th. September 9th. Okay. And as I understand it, impending births are not a reason to change the schedule.
Yes, no, you guys are all set. I actually have already, that is my due date, so I'm hoping I go a week late, so I may be able to make that meeting if I do. Just going off of how my first child was. But I've already spoken with our DPW executive assistant, Michelle Trask, so she will likely be joining one of these, either most likely the August meeting, so that she can sort of get a feel for the process, meet everyone. And then from there on, I'll have her join all the meetings with me until I'm officially out and she takes over.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for planning that out.
You're welcome.
And, yeah, of course, best of luck on your
Thank
second
you.
child. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So I think I got an email from Jane. One of these dates were problematic for her. Let me see if I can find it. Okay. Yeah, we're hearing some background stuff. All right. Hello? Yeah, somebody, we're hearing a lot of background.
I think I can go and mute everyone, so I will do that.
Okay.
And then you can just unmute yourselves when you need to speak. Never mind. I think it was Peter. You got it.
Okay. All right. Okay, so October 28th is a date that Jane may be out of town. So let's go back to October. Do you want to see if we can reschedule that to maybe the prior week?
Well, also
Yeah.
the 14th is Columbus Day. Is that a
Okay.
holiday for Barnstable?
Yep, that's a good catch. So let's see, October. Do you want to try the 7th and the 21st? Is that okay with people?
Yeah.
All right. Is that good for folks? Yeah, and as we go forward, we can always change these again if we have to.
No. Sorry, I think I deleted a lot of stuff on my calendar.
All right. Rob, you've been able to let me make a suggestion then. So
I'm canceling my heart attack. I found it.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, it's good what you can cancel that. So October 7th and 21st, are they okay?
That's good.
Okay, let's move on to November, November 11th and 25th.
11th is Veterans Day.
November
Uh,
11th is, oh, you're right.
Well,
So
that's a
do you want
town
to make it
holiday.
November 12th and 25th?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. And then when we get into December. So I think, Rob, you raised the question of the 23rd because it's the week of Christmas.
Yeah, I just maybe assume a lot of people are vacating, but that's
Yeah,
just an assumption.
I mean, I would think it might be okay to skip a meeting in late December over the holidays.
Well, well.
I not if you don't think so.
Why don't we leave it there for the time being? The only thing, John, I'm thinking if there's stuff that we need, if the goal is to get a Green Communities application in there or something that we need to do as a committee before the end of the year, it might be nice to have at least the meeting there as a placeholder.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just from like a sort of policy point of view, it's very easy to cancel meetings. I think we just need to give 24 or 48 hours notice if we were to submit the agenda, and we typically submit the agenda a couple days before. So if that changes towards the end of the year, that's easy to make a change on the town calendar.
Yeah. Yeah, I prefer to have it and then cancel it than have a scramble at the end there. So,
Yeah.
All right. So that was relatively painless. So I don't really, I guess, have anything else for this meeting. So the agenda for the next meeting will continue to have a Green Communities, food waste, have Chris talk to us about developments and climate change. And Chris, do you have a copy of the ordinance that the town passed declaring things a climate change emergency? I'll
send it. It'd be great.
I'll send that to you, just on the side there.
There,
All
just an FYI,
Yeah.
your emails, I just found in spam. I don't know why. So I'll make sure I check there, but
Okay. Yeah, I've had the same problem myself.
okay.
I had 3 emails last week from people that I know, and they showed up in junk mail. I don't know why. Okay. So anyone else have anything to say about the agenda for the next meeting? Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourning. Thank you, everyone. I thought this was a very useful meeting.